Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Vidal's apartment met him with silence and tranquility as usual. No one ran out to meet him, no one bombarded him with questions about the day. The man was quite satisfied with that. In his 50s, he didn't want any other life, even though the people around him were still trying to guide him to the right path, telling him to urgently find a new wife and have children before it was too late. At his age, well, he looks 10 or 15 years younger than his peers' fitness, swimming, healthy lifestyle, but the fact is that it's a bit late to have a family at the age of 50. He has a woman, 35-year-old Luisana with long legs, who looks like a fashion model, but who is wise, understanding, and very convenient. Classical situation, he's the boss, and she's a personal assistant. This relationship started 7 years ago, and everyone is still fine with it. Vidal enjoys regular dates, Luisana's beauty and youth, and her easygoing nature. Luisana likes her decent income, traveling, expensive gifts, and help in all matters. Luisana is from a dysfunctional family, but she managed to break free from the darkness, and she achieved everything without any help. But she had younger brothers and sisters who were always getting into different trouble, and for some reason, Luisana felt it was her responsibility to help them, sometimes with Vidal's help. The man even considered finding a good psychologist for her to help Luisana get rid of her unhealthy hyper-responsibility towards the younger ones. They are all adults. If Luisana could get on her feet, so could her brothers and sisters, but they have to work hard. Were Vidal and Luisana in love with each other? There was sympathy, mutual understanding, respect. To be honest, it was a mutually beneficial cooperation, and it wasn't that bad by today's standards. And love. Vidal had long believed that it was a made-up term, it never existed in reality. He had this opinion until he was almost 40, and then at some miraculous moment, Viola came into his life. Even their names were similar, Vidal and Viola. Was it a coincidence? Vidal often thought of her, even though over 10 years had passed since she had told him that everything was over between them. But how could he forget those piercing turquoise eyes, her honey-colored skin, her long blonde hair falling in soft waves down to her shoulders? And the laughter that always made his heart feel warm and happy? Vidal took a shower, changed into his pajamas, and relaxed on the sofa, turning on the big TV. He wanted to spend this evening alone. Luisana had suggested going to some exhibition she obviously wanted to meet. But not tonight. The day was too hard, and not only in terms of work. It's just that tomorrow is the anniversary of the tragedy. The man never marked this date in any special way, but it was engraved in his memory. And when the memorable date approached, Vidal felt uncomfortable and anxious, went back to the past again, and tried to think how he should have behaved to make things different. He simply could not go to the exhibition with Luisana today and then go to the restaurant and talk and smile like nothing had happened. And he didn't want Luisana to see his sad face. The man respected Luisana because she worked hard and achieved everything on her own. She was a good woman, a wonderful person, kind, determined, hard-working, beautiful, and, it seems, she loved him. He wished he could reciprocate, but it seems he was born a one-woman man. Now Vidal was the head of a mini-empire and network of car services. The business generated an excellent income. The man had long been able to afford anything he wanted, expensive cars, traveling to all parts and corners of the world. To be honest, he didn't need to work anymore, because the accumulated fortune would be enough for several human lives. But Vidal liked it all: meetings, competitors, search for solutions, business expansion. It was like a fun game. He was certainly not going to retire from business in the nearest future. It all started with opening a small car repair shop in the backyard with Alfonso, a childhood friend. Now Alfonso is also a well-known person, with several car dealerships in the city. At some point, their professional routes diverged, but the men were still close friends. Unlike Vidal, Alfonso was married for the third time and had 6 children. Alfonso loved them all, took care of them all, and provided for them all. Sometimes this whole clan would get together at joint parties, like Alfonso's birthday party. And it was always epic. Don Corleone, Vidal joked at his friend. Alfonso smiled proudly, looking at his offspring happily. But Vidal was a single man in his 50s. There were many women of different ages around him, and any one of them would be willing to marry him, but his numerous affairs remained in the past. And it's not even a matter of age. It was just that Vidal's relationship with Viola had changed a lot. He was not the same Vidal after that. Tomorrow Vidal will go to a place where he can spend some time alone with his beloved, a cemetery. An iron fence, a modest monument. He will always remember Viola as cheerful, as carefree as she looked in old photographs. She was forever young and happy in the photos. But Vidal would go in the evening so that he would not meet any of her relatives there. He wanted to be there without witnesses, and he didn't need any unnecessary questions. The speaker on the TV screen was saying something about the unstable economic situation in their city. Sad story. Vidal made sure that the employees of his company were paid a decent wage. Financial motivation is the most powerful. It's as clear as 2 times 2. And people did their best, worked hard, fulfilled their plans, and were loyal to the company. But there are indeed plenty of people living below the poverty line in their city. Times are tough. Vidal felt especially sorry for the children. He even sponsored several orphanages and often donated money to the foundation for helping young patients in hospitals. Charity was an integral part of his life. All the powerful, successful people Vidal knew did it. Someone tried to atone for sins this way. Someone thanked the universe and God for good fortune. As for Vidal, he simply felt sorry for the unfortunate children. Even today, he came out of the supermarket, where he went after work. He walked briskly to his car and sensed that look as if it burned his neck a little. He turned around and saw a girl. A little girl, about 10 years old, skinny, wearing an oversized jacket and dirty stomped sneakers. She was dirty and unkempt, obviously from a dysfunctional family. She didn't ask for alms, didn't try to earn money washing cars like boys her age who had been working in this parking lot since summer. She just sat on the low fence and looked at Vidal intently for some reason. He wanted to get into the car and drive away, but he felt sorry for the child. What if this girl needed help? The man sighed and walked towards the little girl. She became wary and looked at him unkindly. Homeless children live in expectation of some trouble, which is actually the right thing to do. Are you hungry? Vidal asked. He looked at the girl with compassionate eyes. She looked even more skinny and pale than she looked from the distance, but she was very pretty. Delicate face features, big emerald eyes, fragile body. Is it even possible that parents don't love and appreciate such a beautiful child? This little girl should be cherished, protected, and happy. I haven't eaten anything since yesterday, the girl said, lowering her eyes as if she was ashamed of this confession. Vidal's heart clenched painfully, and he began to think about what he could give her. All he had in his bag was some rye bread, cheese, and wine, and he could hardly offer any of that to a child. Then he looked at the bakery at the corner of the parking lot. Do you like sandwiches? The man asked. Yes, she nodded and smiled, and her face lit up with a special light, turning her into a real beauty. Vidal admired the adorable child for a few seconds and hurried to the bakery. The girl was sitting on the fence, watching the man who had promised her a treat. As Vidal waited in line, he tried to understand where he had seen this girl before. Her face seemed familiar. Something about her was so unusual, he wanted to know the child's story. But would she tell it? Children forced to survive on the streets are usually very cautious and taciturn. And they have to be cunning and sneaky. They can make up different stories. Just because they have to survive somehow. Vidal bought a huge bag of different sandwiches and a bottle of juice and handed it all to the girl. Her eyes lit up with a joyful sparkle. She immediately took a sandwich out of the bag and greedily bit into it with her teeth. Thank you, it's very tasty, the girl demonstrated her good manners. You're welcome, Vidal smiled. Maybe you need some help? Do you have parents? I don't have parents, she confessed. My grandmother is raising us, but she is not even our biological grandmother. She's our grandmother's cousin. It's good that you have a grandmother. But why are you so hungry? Why haven't you eaten anything since yesterday? Grandma doesn't feed you? We don't have much money, the girl confessed. Not enough. Grandma's son drinks heavily. He stole all the money from her purse. Today we went to collect bottles to make at least some money. I'm helping too. I just took a short break. Bruno and the boys wash cars here, so we'll have dinner today. Who's Bruno? He's my brother. Older brother? No, I'm 10 minutes older. Grandma says so, but he gets mad. He doesn't believe it. He says if he's a boy, he's older. Oh, you're twins? Yeah. Grandma says we're royal twins. At first, I thought our parents were royals, but then I realized. It's what they call twins when a boy and a girl are born at the same time. Maybe we should call the custody office, Vidal suggested hesitantly. You and Bruno will go to a good place, where you'll have a clean bed, and proper breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. You'll get an education, and you'll never have to make money that way again. Suddenly the girl tensed and changed her face. Just a moment ago she was smiling, eating a sandwich and wiggling her feet, but now she looked at Vidal with fear and suspicion. Please, no. We don't want to go to the orphanage. She screamed, jumped off the fence, and ran away, clutching the bag of sandwiches tightly to her chest. Vidal cursed himself. How could he have been so careless? He should have been more tactful, more careful. Naturally, the girl was frightened when he mentioned the orphanage. Many children from such families consider orphanages to be evil. Children don't realize that in the orphanage they can have a better life than at home in a family. They can get a good education, make friends, and have a chance for a better future. Vidal sighed and poured a glass of wine. He needed to relax tonight. Maybe, if he was lucky, he'd fall asleep quickly and sleep until morning without nightmares, though it was unlikely. Most likely, he would toss and turn for a long time, as usual on such days, and think about her. Actually, Viola was always in his thoughts in one way or another. He still has a lot of her photos. It was common then to print pictures. Some of them showed the two of them, happy and loving. Some of them showed only Viola, a beautiful girl with bright eyes and a warm, sincere smile. Vidal liked to please and surprise his beloved. Her sincere reactions, laughter, admiration, and gratitude made Vidal really happy. Next to Viola, he felt strong, powerful, important, almost invincible. She came to one of Vidal's offices one summer day. At that time, the 38-year-old man was already the owner of a chain of car repair shops. The business was growing rapidly, and money was pouring in. Vidal was used to the life of a wealthy man who could afford everything. He dated gorgeous beauties, however, he never promised them anything. He thought that it was too early for him to get married. The man was satisfied with his life without the hardships of marriage. Successful business, beautiful girls, traveling, bars, clubs, entertainment. No, he was not a lucky man who inherited the business and a fortune from his rich father. Together with his friend Alfonso, he traveled the hard road to success. They learned, made mistakes, worked day and night, and had their ups and downs. They had to get into everything and work. Since childhood, Vidal was a serious and goal-oriented person, but now, having achieved success, he believed that he had a right to enjoy the pleasures of life, but he never crossed the line. And then one day a successful businessman noticed a girl in the head office, a new employee. He had certainly never seen her before. Vidal still remembered that moment. He went up the stairs to the second floor, where his office was located, and he met a gentle, charming creature, a young slender girl with radiant turquoise eyes, dressed in a white sundress with pink flowers. That tight sundress looked great on her perfect body. At that moment a ray of sunlight fell on the girl through the window, and this touch of sun made her look magical. She barely glanced at Vidal and walked away, hurrying somewhere. And he stopped and looked at her. Later, He found out from one of the employees that 3 female students from the local university had been sent to their company for an internship. Viola was one of the interns. At first, Vidal tried to get her image out of his mind, for there were many other beauties around. And she was too young, only 20 years old, almost a child, and she was too innocent, too inexperienced. He is the boss, she is a young intern, this girl is not for him. But Vidal couldn't help himself. He tried to find Viola everywhere with his eyes. Like a boy, he made up different reasons to accidentally cross paths with her because the presence of this girl filled him with strength and energy. This had never happened to Vidal before. He saw Viola in his dreams. The young beauty was constantly in his mind. Over time, when the girl got used to the office and learned who was who, she started saying hello to Vidal, smiling at him, and sometimes she'd even talk to him about work-related matters. The man always felt awkward with her, sometimes he couldn't utter a word, and sometimes his palms even began to sweat. Vidal desperately hoped that no one around him noticed it, especially Viola, because he didn't want to frighten and embarrass the girl. And in general, Vidal understood perfectly well how it might look from the outside. A rich and powerful businessman and a young student, typical mésalliance. One day Vidal had to stay late at work. It happened quite often. The man left the office as usual, nodded goodbye to the guard, and headed for the parking lot. On the way to the car, he noticed someone walking towards the exit. The office was located in an industrial zone, and the bus stop was quite far away. It must be one of the employees. Now Vidal would catch up with him and offer him a ride. When Vidal approached that person, he was surprised. It was her, Viola. What a twist! The man stopped the car and opened the door. "Get in, I'll give you a ride to the bus stop." "Thank you." Viola was pleased, walked quickly around the car, and got into the front passenger seat. She was so close to him now, so beautiful, so young, so enchanting, and so desirable. But Vidal could not show his feelings. He knew how to hide his emotions, but with Viola, he could hardly do it. "Why are you so late?" the man asked, to break the awkward silence. "There's a crazy story." Viola lowered her eyes and became sad. "What happened?" "I messed up the report. Well, Augusta Rodriguez asked me to bring coffee, and I'm clumsy and spilled it all over the report. She got mad and made me retype it. So I had to stay in the office late." "Yeah, that's Augusta's style," Vidal said. For everyone else she was Augusta, and for him she was Augustada. She was his cousin, and he hired her as head of the economic department. She's been mean since she was a kid. Apparently, now she had found an opportunity to make fun of the poor student. All the reports were available in electronic formats on the secretary's computer. So a new report could easily be printed out in a few seconds. And Augusta knew this very well, so she just decided to show her power this way. Poor Viola. It was very late. It was good that Vidal was also working late today and saw a young student at the exit. Otherwise, she would have had to walk to the bus stop through the industrial zone at night, which is not safe. There are often packs of stray dogs there or suspicious companies. "Let me drive you home," Vidal suddenly suggested. "Where do you live?" "On Grand Via." "Oh, it's on the way," the man lied. In fact, his house was in the opposite direction, but he wanted to prolong these wonderful moments. He was alone with Viola, and there was no one around. "It's very late. I didn't know how I was going to get home." "Thank you so much." Viola smiled. For some time Vidal drove the car in silence. Viola sat next to him and was embarrassed. The boss was giving her a ride, and the situation was unusual. "What kind of music do you like?" Vidal asked. "All kinds of music, but most of all rock music, I guess." Vidal smiled and turned on one of his favorite songs, energetic, joyful, life-affirming. Viola immediately smiled, relaxed, and began to sing along and even dance. Yes, she managed to dance sitting in the passenger seat. She was very relaxed, graceful, and she was sincere. The awkwardness was gone. Vidal managed to watch the road and admire his charming passenger, and he did not want to part with her. The man tried to find a pretext to continue this wonderful night. Unexpectedly, Viola offered a way out. "Excuse me, can you take me a little further, not to Grand Via, but to the market? From there I can take a bus to downtown. I can drive you downtown, too." "Why do you want to go there at night?" "Girls invited me to go for a walk. I didn't want to, so I refused. I wasn't in the mood because of that incident with the report and the coffee, but now for some reason, I don't feel like going home. I'd rather go out with them." "It's interesting now, it's City Day." "City Day?" Vidal was surprised. "I thought it was later." "It is later," Viola explained. "But they decided to throw a celebration tonight because it's Friday, and tomorrow's a day off, so people can relax, have a rest, go for a walk, and wait for the fireworks." Vidal smiled, remembering the times when he and his friends did not miss such events. He liked this festive crowd. Everyone was cheerful and carefree, joking, smiling. Life seemed like a holiday. But it's been years since then. He wondered what it was like now. "I'll take you to the center," Vidal said firmly. "I'm curious to see it all myself." "Where did you and your friends plan to meet?" "Honestly, I don't know where to find them," Viola confessed. "In the morning I refused to go with them. They must be already there. I'll call them and ask where they are." The girl immediately took out her phone and started dialing her friends' numbers, but in vain, none of them answered. As Vidal's car approached downtown, it became clear why. The streets were crowded with people, music was playing, vendors were offering their goods, and magicians, dancers, and singers were performing everywhere. It was impossible to hear a phone ringing in such noise. Vidal could hardly find a place to park. Viola was in no hurry to get out of the car, looking at what was happening with a mix of surprise, amusement, and even fear. So many people. "I'll never find my friends here," she said. "The girls don't answer my calls, they probably don't hear. I'm not going anywhere, it's a little scary." "I think it's fun here," Vidal said. He remembered the atmosphere of fun and unity that usually prevailed at such large-scale city festivals. Suddenly, he desperately wanted to feel it again. "Well, yes, it will be interesting here today, but I can't go there alone. What should I do there now? I'd better go home. I should have called my friends earlier. Why don't we go and see what's there?" Vidal suddenly suggested it. His words sounded simple and natural, as if it were a common thing for a boss to invite an intern to a city celebration. Viola thought about it. It was obvious that she wanted to say yes, but she couldn't make up her mind. She was probably embarrassed by the fact that the boss was inviting her. She might think that he was planning to continue the night with her. "I have an important meeting in a couple of hours," Vidal lied to reduce the awkwardness, "so we have about an hour. Then I have to leave, but I will have time to drive you to Grand Via on the way." "That's great," Viola said happily and got out of the car. They walked along the crowded streets, enjoying the performances of artists and admiring the way the city was decorated for the holiday. Indeed, it was very beautiful. To avoid getting lost in the crowd, they had to hold hands. When Vidal first took Viola's narrow palm, it was like an electric shock. It was an incredible feeling. She walked beside him, and she was so beautiful, happy, cheerful, admiring everything around her, pointing at one thing or another. His heart skipped a beat when she was so close. He held her hand, and everything else seemed unimportant. But when she pointed at something, he was amazed, smiling, pleased. They waited for the fireworks. They stood among the crowds of people in the public garden. Multicolored fireworks lit up the sky with bright flashes, and the faces of all present were turned upward. And only Vidal was not looking at the flowers in the sky, but at Viola. He couldn't take his eyes off her face. No one saw it anyway. Everyone was watching the fireworks. A marvelous moment, as if time had frozen. And then she turned to him with a slightly sad smile. "It's time for you to go," the girl reminded him. "It's been an hour." Yes, right, Vidal realized. They walked to the car, holding hands, otherwise, the crowd would inevitably have swept them apart. Vidal reluctantly let Viola's hand out of his to open the car door for her. It was a long drive back. They ended up in a traffic jam. Viola was nervous, thinking that the boss was late for a meeting because of her. He did his best to convince the girl that everything was fine. "Thank you for taking me to such an event. I really enjoyed it," Vidal said as he parked the car in front of Viola's house. Soon she would leave, and that was it. He wouldn't see her again until Monday. But meeting a girl at the office was not like this when they were sitting in the car next to each other and talking like this. "Thank you," she smiled. "If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have gone to the celebration and watched the fireworks." "Great, it was a wonderful evening." Viola reached for her purse, and her face was very close. Vidal. The man still didn't know who had initiated that tender kiss. He thought it was him. But Viola didn't pull away, she continued the kiss. They pulled away from each other and smiled in silence for a long time. Vidal was dizzy and his heart was pounding frantically. He couldn't believe what had just happened. His emotions were running wild. The man could barely keep himself in control so as not to grab Viola in his arms, not to press her against him. Sometime later, the girl confessed that this was exactly the kind of behavior she had expected from Vidal, so he was trying to control himself in vain. Viola looked confused and embarrassed, her cheeks blushed, which made her even more charming and beautiful. She didn't know how to behave further, what to say, what to do, but her eyes, shining eyes, said that Viola was happy about what had happened. "Viola, I've liked you since the day you came to our office." Vidal decided that there was no point in hiding his feelings any longer, and someone had to break the long silence to make the first step. I noticed, but I didn't believe it. I felt like I was making it up because I also... What? I don't know. I think I like you too. The girl's face turned red. She covered her face with her hands. It wasn't easy for her to confess. Vidal felt a heavy stone fall from his soul. Everything suddenly became simple and clear. Viola had feelings for him. It was obvious and so wonderful. It's so great. He gently removed Viola's hands from her face, looked into her eyes, and kissed her again. This time she wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed herself against him. They sat in each other's arms for a long time that night, not talking about anything, not discussing anything, just enjoying each other's company. And then Viola's phone rang. It was her mother asking where her daughter was. "I have to go," Viola smiled sadly. "Okay. But I want to see you again so badly," Vidal answered honestly. "But everything will be different now," the girl said uncertainly, but hopefully. Of course, the man smiled. He didn't doubt it at all. And everything really became different. At work, Vidal and Viola kept their relationship in secret. There was no need to demonstrate it. But when no one saw them, they looked at each other and smiled, even kissed. It took Vidal's breath away. He had never experienced such feelings and emotions, even when he was young. Soon Viola's internship was over. Now they met outside the office. Vidal would pick Viola up in the evening, and they would go to the movies or cafes, just walk along the streets and parks, ride on carousels, and eat cotton candy. Sometimes they went out of the city, where Vidal taught the girl to drive a car on a deserted country road. Viola refused to go to expensive restaurants, where Vidal used to go with his girlfriends before. "I don't want to, such places scare me with their pompousness," she confessed. Expensive gifts also embarrassed the girl. Vidal wanted to give a girl the whole world. He was ready to buy the whole jewelry store for his beloved, but Viola asked him not to do it. It was unusual. Vidal's previous girlfriends always hinted that they would not mind receiving an expensive gift from him. But Viola fiercely resisted such gestures and even persuaded the man to return to the store a massive gold bracelet, which he had chosen for her for International Women's Day. "I don't wear such expensive jewelry," Viola said, "and in general I like some cheap costume jewelry more." Sometimes she stayed overnight at his place. The girl's parents thought that their daughter was staying with her friends in the dormitory, where the girls were preparing for exams together, but Viola came to him. Vidal felt like he was the happiest man in the world. He fell asleep holding his beloved in his arms, and when he woke up, she was still there, sleeping with her palms under his cheek in a childish way. Vidal admired the sleeping girl for a while, regretting that he never learned to draw. What an amazing portrait it would have been. Then he went to the kitchen to make breakfast. He liked taking care of Viola, and he liked it when she took care of him, giving him a massage or bringing him coffee. Unfortunately, their relationship was still not quite official. The girl didn't introduce Vidal to her friends and parents. It was understandable. Vidal was much older than her, moreover, he was a wealthy businessman. People would hardly believe the sincerity of his feelings. But it didn't prevent them from being happy. Neither age, nor education or life experience were barriers to complete mutual understanding. Each of them had their own life. Vidal had work, business, meetings with partners and adult, respectable friends. Viola had parents, university, student parties, classes, and exams. And her life, it attracted Vidal very much. He liked to listen to Viola's stories. He laughed heartily at funny situations that happened every day at the university with some of her friends. It reminded him of his own student life. And Viola listened with a true curiosity about the man's life, about his meetings, battles with competitors, and communication with adult friends. Sometimes Vidal was jealous. After all, young attractive guys attended the university too, not only girls. Surely many of them are secretly in love with the girl, even though she claims they are all just friends. These boys are not blind, they can't help noticing how stunning Viola is, not just beautiful, but really unique, so sincere, pure, and friendly. She obviously has some special energy. Vidal always feels warm and calm around her. Or maybe Viola has such an influence only on him. Probably not. Vidal has noticed how men of all ages look at the girl, evaluating her beauty, admiring her. Viola herself doesn't notice such glances, she is probably used to them. Later, after everything that had happened, Vidal thought about it more than once. He had a premonition as if he knew that nothing would work out between them. But back then, the man hoped for the best and did everything he could for the sake of a happy future together. He even asked Viola to introduce him to her parents. Naturally, he was nervous, because her father was not much older than he was, but the man planned a serious relationship with Viola, marriage, family, and children, which meant that meeting her parents was inevitable. The girl kept postponing this moment. Vidal didn't doubt the sincerity of her feelings, but he also understood the reason for Viola's doubts. She was afraid, too, because there was such a difference in age and status. Vidal assumed that they would have to face a lot of difficulties, but he was ready to overcome them all, just to be together with Viola. Over time, Vidal's feelings for Viola only grew stronger. He learned how gentle, caring, and kind she was. And also, despite her young age, she was smart and it was very interesting to talk to her. Viola read a lot, was interested in psychology, and was engaged in scientific work at the university. She had many different interests. She took fitness classes with her friends, learned a foreign language, and even planned to start her own business. Vidal offered Viola his help in starting a business, but the girl refused. She wanted to try her own abilities, to understand what she was capable of. However, Viola never refused the man's wise advice and often asked him questions. And also, Viola loved her friends very much. She had great university friends. They went to parties together, prepared for exams together, and often stayed overnight at each other's places or in the university dorms. Viola used to invite Vidal, but he always refused. How would he look in the company of young students? And how would they accept him? What to talk to them about? No, let them have fun without him. When Viola went out with her friends at night, Vidal missed her, was a little jealous, and was worried, almost like a father. At such moments, he clearly felt the gulf between them, but he knew the feelings between them were real, sincere, and nothing could ruin them. He also knew that such trifles as the age difference were no obstacle for him and Viola, and he thanked fate that Viola had come to his office one day for an internship because otherwise they might never have met. That thought sometimes gave Vidal goosebumps. Sometimes there were other moments filled with happiness, light, and warmth, and they happened quite often. At such moments, they didn't feel the age difference at all. Vidal often recalled one episode. It happened in May when he and Viola had been dating for almost a year. Vidal was driving to a meeting with his partner when he suddenly noticed Viola at the bus stop. Apparently, she had finished her classes at the university and was on her way to the market to buy something. The man was happy about the unexpected meeting. Parked, the girl noticed him and was already rushing towards him, smiling with her charming, sincere smile. She was so beautiful, with loose, flowing blonde hair and shining turquoise eyes. Spring came early this year, and Viola had time to get a tan, her light-colored t-shirt emphasizing her chocolate skin tone. "Hi," Viola hugged and kissed Vidal. "What are you doing here?" "I felt that you were going to ride a crowded bus in the heat, so I decided to fix the situation." "Hurry up and get your driver's license, we'll buy you a car. Then you'll never have to take the bus again." "I like to walk," Viola laughed. "It's better for your health." "I don't argue. But it's so hot today." "That's true. By the way, I bought a new swimsuit. It's time to open the swimming season. Tomorrow we'll go to the river with the girls." "Oh, that's great. I'd like to swim too." "So let's go," Viola suddenly suggested. She was always easygoing and ready for adventures. Vidal thought about it. His partners were waiting for him at the office, but after all, he could reschedule the meeting. With his busy schedule, it wasn't often that he could go somewhere during the day with his beloved. The man made a few calls, warned that he would be late, then turned to Viola with a smile. "That's it. Let's go to the beach." "Yay!" The girl wrapped her arms around his neck. They had a wonderful time. Viola looked gorgeous in her new bright yellow swimsuit. Long legs, flat stomach, thin waist, she looked better than a professional fashion model. Other men on the beach admired the gorgeous girl, and she didn't notice it as usual, enjoying the sun, clean cool water, soft sand, and the company of her lover. She swam like a mermaid, being confident and graceful in the water. Vidal admired Viola from the shore. He had dipped only a couple of times because the water seemed too cold for him. Viola did not notice it at all. And then, a cloud came out of nowhere. Everything happened in a matter of minutes. Viola had barely reached the shore before the downpour began. Vidal quickly packed their stuff and covered Viola with a towel. But in just a few seconds it was wet. The car was too far, so Vidal chose a closer hiding place, an old boat shed near the shore. It smelled of old wood and mold, and there were cobwebs in the corners, but most importantly, it was dry and warm there. They were both soaked to the skin. But Viola looked attractive in some special way. Raindrops trembled on her long, thick eyelashes, and her normally straight hair was wavy with moisture. Vidal regretted once again that he couldn't draw this beauty. He's not an artist. "Are you cold?" he asked the girl. "I don't know. It's more like I'm refreshed," she smiled. To be honest, summer hadn't started yet, and I was already tired of the heat. Not a very successful opening of the swimming season. "Well, actually," Viola argued, "I like it. It's a real adventure." The rain drummed on the roof, and it was getting darker and darker, a huge cloud covering the sky. It was peaceful in some way. Vidal sat down next to Viola, hugged her tightly, and she rested her head on his shoulder. The girl often did that. Vidal loved this gesture. At that moment he felt like Viola's protector and support, and he liked this feeling very much. He had a box with a ring in his pocket. He had bought it a long time ago. White gold, diamonds, exclusive designed, the elegant jewelry was created especially for Viola. The man had been preparing to propose to his girlfriend for a long time, planning something original. There were several creative agencies in the city that helped in such situations, but now was the right moment. They're alone in this boat shed, no way to go outside, the rain drumming so cozily on the roof, and Viola is here. She pressed herself against him, wrapped her arms around his neck, and felt relaxed and comfortable. Viola, I was going to do it a long time ago, but something kept getting in the way. Vidal finally decided to do it. He took out a velvet box from his pocket. Be my wife, I can't imagine anyone else in this role. The girl's eyes flashed with joyful fire for a moment. She kissed Vidal and admired the ring. I can't imagine anyone but you as my husband either, she smiled. But I thought the wedding and everything else would be much later. Why wait? I don't want to leave you for a minute. I love falling asleep and waking up together. I love it when you meet me at work. I love you so much. Viola smiled and pressed herself against him again. The man brightened at those words. He loved it when Viola spoke like that. Then the rain ended as abruptly as it had begun, and the sun came out again. Vidal and Viola walked to the car, holding hands. The man was smiling happily. Now Viola was not just his girlfriend, but his fiancée. Vidal and Viola decided that they would get married in September. Viola had to prepare her parents first. She was going to do this after she returned from a language camp in July. The upcoming separation made Vidal sad. The girl would go to England for a month, but it would make the reunion even more joyful. He had a lot of things planned for this month. They wouldn't be able to spend much time together anyway, but he would have time to prepare for the meeting with Viola's parents, to think over the topics of conversation, and, most importantly, he'll have time to think about his introduction speech. He needs to show that he is a decent, serious man. It is important to prove to the girl's parents that he really loves their daughter and is ready to do anything for her. They are people of the same generation, so they can probably find a common language. Vidal hoped so. But the meeting with the parents never happened. Viola went to the camp as she had planned. For her, this trip was both a wonderful vacation and an opportunity to learn the language. Vidal drove her to the airport himself. Viola kissed him at the checkpoint, told him she would miss him, and then happily walked through the gate. The man watched as she joined a group of boys and girls as young as Viola was. This crowd looked so wonderful. Young, beautiful, motivated, full of plans and hopes. He wondered how they looked together with Viola. Surely not as harmonious. Vidal chased away the unpleasant thoughts and headed for the parking lot. He had a lot of business meetings today. It was a busy time, new branches were opening. At first, Viola called every evening, and she was happy, cheerful, and full of impressions, saying she missed him and wished Vidal were there. I wish you could see all this beauty, you'd love it. I have been to London many times, Vidal smiled back, and I plan to travel around the world with you. We have everything ahead of us. I love traveling, and I think you like traveling, too. I can't wait to get through all this, meeting my parents, getting married. I just want to finally begin our life together. That's what Vidal wanted, too. The challenges ahead were a little frightening, but it was nothing compared to the happiness that awaited them both. And then something changed. Viola stopped calling. Now Vidal dialed her himself, but it was a different Viola, closed, aloof. She tried to end the conversation faster, answered questions quickly, and hid her eyes if Vidal dialed her via video call. Vidal tried to find out what was going on. He was worried about the changes. Viola invariably replied that everything was fine, she was just tired from the new impressions. The man hoped it was true, although his heart told him something was wrong. The intuition of an experienced businessman was excellent. The day of Viola's return had come. Vidal offered to meet her at the airport. Don't, the girl asked, my father will pick me up. Maybe this is the perfect opportunity for us to get acquainted. It's time for us to talk to your parents. No, this is not the right situation. You don't have to come. But it's been so long since we've seen each other, I miss you. I'll see you later, Viola answered and ended the call. See you later. That was it. She didn't say that she missed him, she didn't express her joy at the upcoming meeting. There was no joy. Vidal was tormented by uncertainty and premonitions. On the day of Viola's arrival, he called her and suggested that Viola get some rest after the flight in the afternoon and that they meet in the evening. But she refused and made some excuse, saying that some relatives were coming to visit them today, and her parents asked Viola to stay home to tell them about the camp. The next day, the girl refused to meet again. This time she had something urgent at the university. That same evening, Vidal drove to her house himself. He couldn't wait any longer. He parked so that he could see Viola's entrance. They needed to meet. He needed to know what was going on. What if his beloved needed his help right now? It was clear that something was wrong. Finally, he saw her. She was approaching the house. Viola was talking to someone on the phone. The conversation must have been pleasant. The girl was smiling and joking. Vidal even gasped at the sight of his beloved. He missed her so much, and now Viola was very close to him. Seeing her was happiness. Vidal got out of the car and walked towards her. The smile instantly flew off the girl's face. She slowed down, then stopped. Viola was not happy about this meeting. She was even confused. She said a few last words to her interlocutor and ended the call. Hi, Vidal was still smiling. He tried to hug the girl, but she pulled away. The man felt as if someone had poured ice-cold water on him. Viola, what is going on? Vidal heard an anxious tone in his voice. I told you I was busy today. Viola lowered her eyes. She looked faded and confused, and it was frightening and alarming. But you're back home now, and I think we need to have a serious talk. I suppose so, she sighed. We have to talk sooner or later anyway. But let's not do it here. All right, let's talk in the car. No, not in the car, in the park. Right behind Viola's house was a huge park. The wide asphalt road was surrounded by tall old trees on both sides, spruces, poplars, maples, and oaks. There were cozy old-fashioned benches along the way. Vidal and Viola sat down on one of them. I should have told you right away, the girl began. Something has happened. You can always tell me anything, the man assured her. I don't want there to be secrets between us. But this. You won't like it. I'll be fine. Of course, but. Anyway, we have to break up, Viola finally said. What? Vidal felt as if he'd been kicked in the solar plexus. It was hard to breathe. He expected anything but that. But why? At the camp, I realized we weren't right for each other. You're much older, and we're different. Vidal couldn't believe what he was hearing. When Viola left, everything was fine between them. They were planning a wedding, and now this. Wait, don't make hasty decisions. Let's discuss everything. Vidal tried to be calm, understanding, and logical. Did any problems arise? Yes, Viola nodded. You see, I fell in love there, for real. Vidal listened to the girl without interrupting. She stammered at first and was embarrassed, but then she suddenly pulled herself together and spoke more confidently and clearly. It turned out that among the students in the language camp was a senior student, Diego, a fun-loving, funny, intelligent, charismatic leader. He also played guitar and sang different songs. In addition, he was a member of the university volleyball team with all the consequences, great shape, relief muscles, and physical strength. All the girls immediately fell in love with this handsome man. All the girls only talked about Diego. They discussed all the details from what he ate for breakfast to who and how the guy looked at. Viola didn't pay any attention to him at first. She was already a fiancée after all, but then everything changed. At some disco, Diego invited the girl to dance. He looked at her in some special way, spinning Viola around the hall so skillfully, saying beautiful words. It was obvious to everyone that Diego had made his choice. He obviously liked Viola very much. Some of the girls were happy for their friend, some were jealous. She tried to resist her feelings, but she couldn't help it. With Diego, she could go anywhere, introduce him to her friends, and his company was fun and interesting. They were almost the same age, so Viola wasn't afraid that someone wouldn't understand them. Now she didn't have to lie and hide. Life with Diego was bright and colorful. He was always inventing something, and he was never bored. And also, he wrote a song for Viola and performed it with his friends under the windows of the girls' dormitory. He found some musicians somewhere and set up impressive lighting. All the girls crowded on the balconies to listen to the romantic and beautiful song composed especially for Viola. Then, standing on the balcony and looking at Diego with an electric guitar, Viola realized, that's it, she had fallen in love, and there was no turning back. She remembered about Vidal, about the ring, about the upcoming wedding, but everything became absolutely unimportant. And Viola ran out into the street. Diego hugged her, spun her around, and the witnesses of this amazing scene loudly applauded, whistled, and shouted something encouraging. Diego and Viola had a vivid romance. And now the girl could not imagine life without this man. The only thing that darkened her happiness was the forthcoming conversation with Vidal. Now you know everything, the girl sighed. The conversation was extremely unpleasant for her, and for Vidal too. The man felt a physical pain somewhere in the solar plexus, which is probably where the human soul is located. Please take it, the girl handed him the box with the ring. You can keep it, Vidal said, it's a gift. It will be a pleasure for me. But you know what memories are associated with it, Viola shook her head. It's not right. Vidal grudgingly took the box with the ring from her hands. I'm sorry, she said, I feel so guilty. You're a good man, so attentive, so caring. It's not because of you, but because of me. It's not your fault. You'll meet another girl, more beautiful, more caring. You're an incredible person. Viola seemed to be speaking sincerely, and yet it was clear that she wanted to end the conversation and run away. Vidal didn't torture her, grinned sadly, sighed, and then took her hand, kissed it quickly, he just couldn't help himself. The girl shuddered but didn't pull her hand away. Be happy, the man smiled, stood up, and left the park first. He felt that Viola was looking at him. They never saw each other again, not even accidentally crossing paths anywhere. However, Vidal sometimes monitored Viola's life on social media. Sometimes she posted photos and short messages on her page. Here is a happy Viola standing with other students on the porch of the university. All of them have diplomas in their hands. It means that Viola is now a young professional. And here she is posting advertising information about her company. The girl has opened a small plumbing store. She was going to start her own business a long time ago and succeeded. Vidal smiled then, he didn't doubt she would succeed. And about a year after their separation, Viola's account was full of wedding photos. The girl looked like a princess in a white dress with a magnificent skirt. The groom was tall, athletic, and charming. That was the lucky Diego. The guy gently held the bride by the waist and looked at her with loving eyes, and Viola smiled happily. What a great couple! It was clear that they were in love and happy. A few more years passed. And there are new photos, which were surprising for Vidal. Discharged from the maternity hospital. Viola holds a tight pink bundle, and Diego holds the same, but blue. Viola had twins, a boy, and a girl. Vidal had a smile on his face all day after hearing the news. Wow, Viola is a mom now. It could have been Vidal's children. Vidal tried to stop thinking about what it would be like if. It couldn't lead to anything good. The man tried to organize his life. After the story with Viola, he was done with partying and short-term romances. Vidal was no longer attracted to such a life. He immersed himself in work. The business became his salvation and the only cure. And that paid off, too. Vidal's empire was growing, and his fortune increasing day by day. And then Luisana came into his life. She was young, beautiful, and understanding. Vidal felt comfortable and relaxed with her. She always knew what to say to him at any moment, supported him, encouraged him, and inspired him. Did Vidal love her? He was not indifferent to this woman. But he had never felt such feelings as for Viola. Luisana was good enough for him. Perhaps Luisana was waiting for some decisive steps from her man, maybe not a wedding, but at least a proposal to live together. But Vidal was satisfied with everything. In his 50s, he was used to a single life. There were many advantages to it. For example, all his belongings always stayed where he left them, it was always quiet in the house, or on the contrary he could turn on music, but only the music he liked. Vidal was grateful to Luisana. She had come into his life 7 years ago, when it seemed that everything ahead of him was no longer bright, good, or pleasant. Only pain, suffering, and black longing. When Vidal saw this terrible picture on Viola's profile, a burning candle on a dark background with a black mourning ribbon, he could not believe his eyes. He thought it was a mistake or someone's stupid joke. The man opened his beloved's profile. Yes, he still loved her despite the years that had passed. And, chilling with horror, he read a post full of pain. The post had been written by one of Viola's friends. Vidal knew that a plane had recently crashed over the ocean with people from their city on board. Viola and her husband were among them, and her and Diego's parents were flying with them. They decided to go on vacation together for the first time, and the plane crashed. It took Vidal a long time to accept it. They hadn't seen each other in a while, but he would occasionally check her social media, just to make sure she was doing well. He was happy to see her successes, smiled when he saw her new photos, and hoped that someday they would meet and talk. It was his dream to look into the girl's big turquoise eyes again, to hear her sweet voice, to admire her beautiful smile. That hope gave him a reason to live. And now that hope is gone. It was so hard for Vidal to accept the reality that he began to numb his grief with alcohol. He realized that it was wrong, that it was a road to nowhere, but he couldn't control himself. Drinking fogged his head, chased away bad thoughts, chased away all his thoughts. It made him feel better for a while. During this difficult time, Luisana came into his life. She was always there for him, bringing water and headache pills, listening attentively, saying relevant and important words. Vidal became used to her care, her support, and her constant presence. Sometimes Luisana stayed overnight at his place, but she always sensed when Vidal wanted to be alone, and left, without resentment, without complaints, without any obligations. She was sensitive, empathetic, benevolent. With Luisana's help, Vidal got out of his grief, came back to life, and started working again. Time dulled the pain, but the longing for Viola never went away. Sometimes his beloved came to him in his dreams, sometimes cheerful and carefree, sometimes sad and silent. Vidal always woke up in the morning in tears and with a headache. Empathetic Luisana already knew what was wrong, and if she was near him, she would bring him a headache pill and a glass of water. She also had many problems, but the woman never burdened Vidal with them, saying only once that her greatest pain in life was that she would never be able to have children and that something was wrong with her health because of her difficult childhood. Vidal didn't ask for details. He was surprised that Luisana dreamed of having children. The woman seemed cold, even selfish. Vidal couldn't believe that such a determined career woman just wanted to be a mom. Luisana invited him to the exhibition today, but Vidal refused. Tomorrow is the day Viola died. 7 years have passed, and he still can't get over the fact that she's gone. He can't get it out of his head. Tomorrow he would go to the cemetery and see the proof that he would never meet Viola again. The cold granite monument. He even blamed himself for her death. If he had been able to convince her to stay with him, she wouldn't have died. He wouldn't have let his beloved get on a plane of a cheap airline where the planes were in poor technical condition. The guilt had not gone away in those 7 years. Vidal blamed himself for not even trying to fight for his love back then, for considering himself unworthy of Viola. And that's the outcome. The next day after lunch, Vidal went to the cemetery with a huge bouquet of scarlet roses. He walked the familiar way to the grave. The man had already learned about Viola's neighbors for so many years, mostly they were elderly people. That's the way it should be. Vidal noticed two tiny figures near the gray monument from afar. Probably kids from the nearest village, collecting sweets from graves. It's creepy, but when you're a kid, you probably don't think about such things, you just want sweets. The kids noticed Vidal, too. A boy and a girl, both about the same age, about 9 or 10 years old, both poorly dressed. The man thought they were about to run away, frightened of a stranger. But the children didn't leave, on the contrary, they straightened up, took each other's hands. They felt that they were the masters of this place. Vidal approached them. They looked at him with a puzzled look. And then the man recognized the girl. It was the girl who had met him in the parking lot yesterday, the one he had given sandwiches to and then frightened by the mention of the orphanage. Was it a coincidence? The boy stepped forward, looking fearlessly at the stranger and wrinkling his eyebrows. "Who are you?" he asked, looking at Vidal angrily and suspiciously. It was obvious the boy is the girl's brother, with the same big turquoise eyes and almost identical facial features. It's so sad that fate wasn't kind to them. They are forced to find ways to earn, or to find food. They wash cars in parking lots, collect bottles, or sweets at graves. Their parents are probably alcoholics. They don't care about their son and daughter. Terrible childhood. I'm a friend of the woman who is buried here. Today is the anniversary of her death, so I brought some flowers. Vidal explained the situation to the kids as softly and calmly as possible, so they wouldn't think he was going to chase them away or scold them. He really wanted to help these kids. The man put his hand into his pocket, took out a couple of crumpled banknotes, and handed them to the boy. "Here, take it. It is tradition to share food on days like this to honor the memory of the deceased. But I didn't know I would meet anyone here, so I didn't bring any sweets. Here, please take the money and buy something." The boy looked at the money in the man's hand, but for some reason was in no hurry to take it. The girl was very surprised, her eyebrows raised, her eyes widened, and she was impressed by Vidal's words. "So you knew our mom?" The boy asked a question the man had certainly not expected. "Mom. So Viola was you?" "Right, of course." The man even slapped himself on the forehead. Why didn't he figure it out right away? He knew Viola had children, twins, a boy, and a girl. They must be about the same age as these kids. And those turquoise eyes, their facial features, facial expressions, even their voices. That's why it all seemed familiar to Vidal. The children look like their mother, like Viola. Not exact copies, but Viola's features are clearly visible. Suddenly these two faces had become so dear to Vidal. "Is Viola your mother?" Vidal asked, just to keep the conversation going. "Yes," the children answered in unison. Looking at them, the man's heart ached. Poor little ones. How hard things must be for them without their mom and dad. As far as Vidal knew, the children's grandparents on both sides had died in the plane crash, too. The family was on their way to a vacation, and then it crashed. When the children were orphaned, they were only 2 or 3 years old. Most likely, the children did not even remember their parents, but they missed them, longed for them, and even came to their mother's grave on the anniversary of the tragedy. A sad sight that could melt even the coldest heart. A boy, a girl, and a cold gray monument. For some reason Vidal thought the children had died that day too, but to be completely honest, he had been so broken by the loss that he didn't think much about it at the time. He didn't care. Viola was gone, everything else didn't matter. What a fool. A selfish fool. He immersed himself in his grief and forgot about everything else. He suffered, drank, didn't want to live, and at the same time, 2 babies needed his help and support so badly. He can help them, that's what he can do for Viola. And the fact that these children needed help was obvious. They were in a very miserable situation, it seemed that they were even starving. Vidal approached the monument and the children stepped aside to let him come closer. When they learned that the man was their mother's friend, their faces changed from anger to kindness, even a kind of curiosity. Vidal placed the flowers at the bottom of the monument, mentally said hello to Viola, and, as always, said he loved her and apologized. Only this time he added something else. He promised to take care of her children and assured her that they would be fine now. Then Vidal turned to the boy and the girl, smiled at them, and said, "Well, my friends, now let's get acquainted. My name is Vidal, or Uncle Vidal if you like. A long time ago I knew your mother very well. My name is Aria." The girl introduced herself, her face lit up with a smile, the same smile as Viola's. It made Vidal's heart feel warm. Bruno, the boy introduced himself and reached out his hand to Vidal. The man shook it seriously, as if Bruno was his business partner. "Yeah, he's a stern kid. But it can't be otherwise. Their life is very hard, and of course, it affected their characters." "Who do you live with?" "With Grandma Christina," the little girl answered. She started pulling weeds from the flower bed on her mother's grave, and her brother rushed to help her. "And who is she, Grandma Christina?" "She's our grandmother's cousin," Bruno answered maturely. "We have had no other relatives since the airplane crash." It looked like Grandma Christina had told the children all the details of the story and had not hidden anything, despite their young age. "They wanted to send us to the orphanage," Aria, who was more sociable than her brother, shared details, "but Grandma Christina wouldn't let us go. She said the conditions there were terrible and we wouldn't survive there. The teachers hurt the kids, the older kids hurt the younger kids, and also the food there is terrible and they forced the kids to work very hard." Now it's clear why yesterday Aria ran away as soon as Vidal mentioned the orphanage. Christina must have had very outdated ideas about institutions for children without parental care. Now there are completely different conditions there. At least the children would live better than with Grandma Christina. They wouldn't have to collect bottles to buy some food once in a couple of days. "Doesn't Grandma Christina hurt you?" "No, she is kind," Bruno answered. "She's very nice. But she's old and sick, she can't work anymore, and that's why we live so poorly," Aria added. "Some people live worse," Bruno said sternly. "We could live better," said the girl suddenly, "if it weren't for Uncle Felipe." "Who is he?" Vidal became suspicious. "Christina's son," the boy explained, wrinkling his lips contemptuously. "He drinks, insults Christina, doesn't work. And he takes her money to buy another bottle of booze. That's why we have to earn money and look for food." "Does he live with you?" Vidal was horrified. "Yes," the children answered in unison. "And what about you? Does he hurt you?" The man felt anger boiling up in him. He would find Uncle Felipe and ask him some questions. "No. When he's drunk, we're out of his sight. Granny Christina always scolds him and tries to talk sense into him, so he's always hurting her for it." The girl lowered her eyes. She was ashamed to talk about it. "Aria, you talk too much," Bruno reproached his sister. "What's the big deal?" Aria said angrily. "He's Mom's friend. Look at the bouquet he brought her." "Don't worry, I really want to help you. I couldn't help your mom, but let me help you. I need to see Grandma Christina. Will you take me to her?" "Yes," Bruno nodded decisively, "but it's a long walk. Our house is on Calle de las Flores." Vidal raised his eyebrows in surprise. "It's really far, on the other side of the city. Did you really come here on foot? I mean, your home is on the other side of the city. It's very far." "Well, yes," the girl shrugged her shoulders, and in that gesture, the man recognized Viola again. "That's why we only got here in the evening. First, we visited our dad, and now we're here to see our mom. What if we don't walk, but drive?" "No," the children answered in unison. "We would never get into a car with a stranger," Bruno explained. So Vidal went hiking with the kids. He had no choice. It was a long walk, and on the way, they talked about everything and even managed to become friends. A couple of times Vidal organized breaks in different cafes. The children did not refuse cakes and sodas. It was obvious that they do not often have such delicious treats. It turned out that the children still go to school and try not to miss classes. They skipped a week once, and a woman from the custody service came to Grandma Christina, threatening to take the children to an orphanage if Grandma Christina couldn't cope. Brother and sister liked studying, but there was not enough time for studying. They had to get food somehow. Sometimes there was no food at all at home. And, to be honest, they were often mocked at school for their poor, old clothes, so the brother and sister tried to reduce communication with classmates. "But I never let them hurt us," Bruno said flatly, clenching his small fists. Poor guy, his life is hard, he has to protect himself and his sister. When they reached the house on Calle de las Flores, it was already dark and cold. Vidal regretted that he had left his jacket in the car, and he was also worried about the children, thinking that they might catch a cold. But they did not notice the cold at all. Life in harsh conditions had hardened them. The house was very old and shabby. The house had a cracked and peeling facade, and the fence had rotted long ago. Vidal followed the children in silence. He was very anxious before meeting with Grandma Christina. What should he tell her? How could he explain who he was, and that he wanted to help the children? Bruno opened the door, and it swung open at once. Probably they never locked the front door. Vidal found himself in a cramped, dark hallway with peeling wallpaper. There was a smell of smoke and booze inside, and a heavy snore came from one of the rooms. "Uncle Felipe is drunk," Bruno said. "That's too bad," Aria sighed. "Now he'll sleep an hour or two, and then he'll be up all night again." "No sleep again, we'll have to hide all night long. Children shouldn't live here. Poor Viola. It's good she can't see the horrible conditions her children live in." At the sound, Christina came out into the hallway, or rather crawled out. She was a very old, sick woman, and she probably didn't refuse to drink too. Her face showed signs of alcohol addiction. But at least now she was sober. "Who are you?" Christina looked suspiciously at Vidal. "What did those two do again? Did they scratch your car or steal something?" "We never steal other people's stuff," Bruno shouted. "Shut up," Christina shouted at him. "Go to your room." Bruno and Aria obediently slipped behind the closed door and Vidal. Vidal introduced himself and said they needed to talk, and it was going to be a long and serious conversation. "Well, then, let's go into the kitchen," the woman said. "I'll make some coffee since the conversation is so serious." They sat at the unsteady, shabby table drinking freshly brewed coffee and talking. Grandma Christina turned out to be a kind and understanding person with a difficult fate. Vidal found it easy to communicate with her. He told all his story, his and Viola's, starting from the moment when the young beauty came to his office. "Wow," the old woman said, when Vidal had finished his long story, "your story is worth making a movie about you. Now I understand something." "Understand what?" "I understand why Viola wanted to name her son Vidal. But her relatives talked her out of it. They said Brun would be better. Daughter Aria, and son Bruno. So she agreed. They are very nice," Vidal smiled, "so friendly, so smart." "Yes," Granny Christina nodded. "Before the tragedy, their parents devoted a lot of time to them and educated them. At their age, children could already draw, knew numbers and letters, and even learn to read a little, and then it happened. When they were going to the resort together, they left the kids with me. We had a very different life then. Felipe was still a student, he was drinking alcohol at the time, but it didn't bother me. He was young, and he went to parties. Everybody's been through it. I was still strong and healthy, and I was happy to spend time with the kids. So they left the twins with me, went to the airport, and 4 hours later the news said that the plane had crashed. Granny Christina didn't give the twins to the orphanage because they were family, even though they were distant. She felt sorry for the babies. The woman thought they would be abused in the orphanage. Christina had to quit her job to take care of the children. That wasn't a problem. Her age allowed her to retire. They had enough money to live a decent life. She also received social welfare for the children. Felipe got a scholarship and even worked part-time. But Christina also had a part-time job. She worked as a janitor at a small local store for modest wages. It was hard both mentally and physically and financially, but there was still enough money. And then something went wrong. Felipe started to drink a lot. He left his studies, he was not going to get a job, and it came to the point that he began to take money from his mother's purse, not worrying that it was money for food or medicine. And then Christina got sick. She had joint problems and could no longer work. She got a disability. The state started to pay her disability support, but there was a catastrophic shortage of money. Felipe could take almost all the money. It was useless to argue with him. When he was drunk, he became aggressive and very angry. Grandma Christina was afraid that he would hurt her and the children, so she did not confront him. I realized that I can't give the kids the life they deserve. They live in a nightmare. They're so good, so smart. These kids deserve better than that. But what can I do? I can't give them a better life. As long as I'm alive, I'll try as hard as I can, but my death is coming, the disease is progressing, and soon I'll not be able to walk. And I don't know where the kids will go after that. We have no relatives. To an orphanage? I don't know how I'll look their parents in the eye when we meet in the other world. They entrusted me with the children, and I failed. What if I adopt them? Vidal suddenly suggested. He had already decided that he would not leave these children. The decision to adopt them came automatically and seemed right and natural. It was the only way out. Aria and Bruno would be better off with him. He would give them a happy childhood and a chance for a good future. Why? How? Granny Christina was confused. It's weird, you're a stranger to them. It's not weird. And I'm not a stranger, you know our history. Raising Viola's children and giving them a happy life is the only thing I can do for her now. I don't mind, Granny Christina suddenly said. I can't cope with raising them myself, and it's only going to get worse. But we need to ask the children to see if they agree. They agree. Bruno came from behind the door, holding the hand of embarrassed Aria. Naturally, the children couldn't resist and overheard the conversation between the adults. Now they know everything. You're good, I knew it right away. In the parking lot yesterday, the girl said, trying to hide behind her brother's back for some reason. She was sincere, very shy, and vulnerable. Bruno was the same. He was still a little boy, though he tried to look mature and strong. Vidal looked at the children and could not hold back a smile. He felt some strange connection with these little ones, even some kind of kinship. They would be very happy together, but they had so much to catch up on, studies, education, traveling, but that's okay, they would cope. Vidal was relaxing on a lounge chair in front of a swimming pool with crystal clear turquoise water. The sun was shining. It was very hot in July in Turkey. Luisana sat on the side of the pool. She was long-legged, tanned, beautiful, and now happy. Her usually coldly aloof expression had disappeared, and now Luisana was smiling a lot. Now she had a warm smile on her face, which suited her well. Luisana looked at Aria and Bruno playing in the pool. They were a family now. They had to overcome a lot of difficulties on the way to this happiness, to break a lot of bureaucratic obstacles, but they succeeded. Social services refused to allow a single man to adopt children. They told him, "You must have a wife." Vidal did not think long. He immediately proposed to Luisana, explaining the situation to her beforehand, assuming that the woman might be frightened by the idea of becoming a mother of 2 children who have lived in such harsh conditions. But Luisana hugged him, burst into tears, and said she was the happiest woman in the universe. She had dreamed of children, but could not have them. And she loved Vidal. She didn't say it out loud, but her actions and behavior were much more expressive. Even in my wildest dreams, I couldn't have imagined that things would turn out this way. Luisana looked really happy and inspired. You and I, and the children, will have a real family. I will do everything I can to make us happy. And Luisana kept her promise. She surrounded Aria and Bruno with warmth, attention, and care, and immediately made friends with them. Luisana also helped Vidal to get closer to the children. After all, she is an amazing woman, sensitive, gentle, tactful, and wise. Vidal realized that he was very lucky to have Luisana. They did not forget about Christina. Vidal paid for her treatment at an expensive private clinic. It turned out that the woman's disease could be controlled. A full recovery was out of the question, but the doctors improved her condition significantly. Poor Christina waited for the day when she would not be able to walk. She was already looking for a cheap wheelchair. But suddenly, they promised her that if she followed all the recommendations and took the medicine, she would be able to walk for the rest of her life without any problems. She couldn't even dream of such a thing. Granny Christina was a close, dear person for Ariette and Bruno, and therefore for Vidal, too. And now they were on vacation in one of the best hotels in Turkey. The children were enjoying the sun, warm sea, and delicious fruits. Vidal and Luisana took them to interesting excursions and amusement parks. They both liked to see how happy Ariette and Bruno were with everything around them, wondering, laughing, and learning new things. Vidal got up from the lounge chair and slowly approached Luisana. "Go get some rest, sunbathe, swim, and I'll keep an eye on them. It's my turn." He smiled at her. "No, I'll stay with you." Luisana smiled and rested her head on Vidal's shoulder. "I want us all to be together. They're so wonderful. Thank you for them, for everything." "No, thank you for everything." Vidal put his arm around Luisana's waist. Now the two of them were watching the children play. They had already found friends in the swimming pool, and the gang was having a real sea battle. Vidal recognized his children from this mixed crowd: the slender, flexible Aria in her bright pink swimsuit, and the tanned, agile Bruno. Daughter and son, Viola's children. The man really hoped that Granny Christina was right and Viola could see them from somewhere above and smile, because now she can be sure that her children's lives will definitely be good. It can't be any other way.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.